Hi, boys and girls. I'm coming to you from my house again. So I hope you're enjoying your time at home. It's the perfect time to get comfy and do a lot of reading. I hope you're doing that. And today I have another book that I wanted to share with you. It's called A Spider Named Apollo. And if that word Apollo reminds you of something, it should. This has to do with that Baroque ensemble that came to our school a few weeks ago in January called Apollo's Fire. Do you remember it? And if you haven't already watched the first link in the Google Classroom, that is Apollo's Fire playing A Fox Came Out on a Chilly Night. Remember that one? They performed it for our school. Go back and watch that first before I read this book to you, because it will remind you of everybody in the orchestra. Miss Amanda was the singer, and let's see, Miss Tina played the hammered dulcimer. Do you remember that instrument that had 88 strings on it, and she hits it with little hammers? And Miss Jeanette is actually the orchestra leader, and she's in the other link that I put up there too, so you can watch that also. Miss Jeanette was not at our school, but I think you'll remember Mr. Brian, who played that big, long thing that looked like a guitar, but it's called a lute. And so he was kind of fun, talked to us all. Anyway, so this is called a Spider Named Apollo. And if you've already watched that again, then you remember what the orchestra is like. And you remember a Baroque orchestra is an orchestra with very, very old instruments, like 400 years old. And the music was written way back then too. So that's why the instruments look kind of strange. So, Adventures of a Multi-Legged Music Lover. Apollo's the Spider. Here we go. And this book was written by Jeanette Sorrell, who is the leader, the conductor of that orchestra. She wrote it with her mom, actually. Have you ever squished a spider? Many people do, but some spiders are nice, like me. We eat nasty pests in your home that could be harmful, and we have interesting lives. The top hat on that spider. I'm a cellar spider. Don't confuse me with a daddy long legs. I grew up in a dark corner of a church in Cleveland, Ohio. They're just right down the road from us, so it's kind of neat to hear that in a book. When my 26 brothers and sisters and I came out of Mama's egg sack, everyone was pointing and looking at me strangely. They all had 8 legs, but for some reason I had 10. There's his brothers and sisters. Everyone laughed because I was different. I felt shy and lonely and confused. Miss Jeanette talks about, in other interviews, she talks about how when she was a child, she also felt that way. She felt a little bit lonely and different because she loved music, and I guess her friends didn't like it so much, so she felt kind of out of place, which is a shame. One day, I was wandering through the church alone, and I heard beautiful music. I followed the sound down the hall, up the stairs, around the corner, and came upon an orchestra. There were 15 musicians playing beautiful music together. I saw a program lying on the pew, and it said, Apollo's Fire Baroque Orchestra. I loved the name. At that moment, I decided to call myself Apollo. I spied a microphone hanging from the ceiling, so I crawled up high to listen, hanging out at the rehearsals. I felt so happy. If you look carefully, you can see me. There he is. He's on most of the pages. I love to watch all of the Apollo's Fire musicians. The viola da gamba looks like a cello but sounds softer. It has a nickname, Gamba. Mr. Rene plays both the gamba and the cello. His fingers move so fast. Now, Mr. Rene did not come to our school because he lives kind of far away, but he's usually the one that plays the cello, and you'll see him in the links if you watch on YouTube, Apollo's Fire. The violin players look so graceful as their bows move across the strings. When the bows move fast, the music gets very excited. If only I could play the violin. I love to watch Miss Sue play the bass. She plucks the strings and makes a low, low sound that is beautiful, but the bass is very big. I don't think I could play the bass even with 10 legs. There he is down here by the page number, if you can see. There are lots of wind instruments. Flutes, recorders, oboes, horns, and trumpets. The loudest is the trumpet. Shh, please don't tell the musicians, but I do not really like the trumpet. It is very loud and shrill, and once almost shook me off my perch on the microphone. I love the harpsichord best. The director, Miss Jeanette, plays the harpsichord. I love watching her fingers race up and down the keys. Sometimes I close my eyes and I imagine myself playing the harpsichord. Some people say that the spiders cannot play harpsichords, but I don't believe it. After all, I have as many legs as Jeanette has fingers. A harpsichord looks like a piano, but it sounds very different, and they didn't bring it to our school because it's so huge, but if you look at some of the YouTube videos, you'll see Jeanette playing the harpsichord. I learned that Apollo's Fire is a special orchestra that plays with very old instruments. Most of the music they play is called Baroque. I think their music is beautiful. It helps me forget about being lonely. But I wish I had a friend to share the music with. At least I've learned that my 10 legs are useful. They help me run very fast so that I don't get squished. And they help me dance the samba. And maybe one day play the gamba. One day, the musicians were very excited. They were preparing for a special concert, an opera. It would be held in a beautiful place called Severance Hall. Now, Severance Hall is in Cleveland, and it is a wonderful place that the Cleveland Orchestra plays at too. But Apollo's Fire has also played there, and it's beautiful, high ceilings and has gold trim. It's really pretty. The opera was called The Magic Flute by the composer Mozart. I learned that an opera is a musical story acted out in costume. 2,000 people were expected to come to the concert. I was determined to follow the musicians to Severance Hall and hear this opera. But how to get there? Then I thought of a clever plan. This is a harpsichord. It looks like a very big, long piano. When the musicians went on a coffee break from their practicing, I spun a long, long silk web and carefully crawled from my microphone perch down, right into this inside of Jeanette's green harpsichord. I found a comfortable corner for hiding. That evening, after the musicians had finished practicing, Mr. Tom, the stage manager, came and took the harpsichord away to Jeanette's house. This was my first hitchhiking experience, riding in a harpsichord. The next week went by so fast. I hung out in Miss Jeanette's harpsichord at her house as she practiced many hours. It was fun to be inside the harpsichord and feel the music vibrating. But then something happened that I did not expect. The day before the concert, Mr. Tom came to Miss Jeanette's house with a strange instrument. I heard Jeanette call it a glockenspiel. Mr. Tom called it a glock. I love the name Glock. But suddenly I panicked. Miss Jeanette was not going to play the harpsichord for the concert at beautiful Severance Hall. She was going to play the glock. I needed to act fast, so that night when Jeanette was sleeping, I crawled out of the harpsichord and climbed into the glock. Once inside, I felt cozy. This is actually how they carry their instruments around with this van. Finally, the concert day arrived. I was so excited. I dressed up in my very best hat and bow tie. Mr. Tom wrapped the Glock in its soft brown cover, placed it carefully in a van, and drove down the hill to Severance Hall. Then he placed it on the stage. When I finally dared to peek out over the top of the Glock, I could hardly believe my eyes. So here he is on the Glock. There was a beautiful painted ceiling and a huge stage surrounded by gold organ pipes. Around the edges of the theater were special box seats. It was the most beautiful place I had ever seen. And I have seen Severance Hall, and it is one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. I'll try to put up some pictures of a glockenspiel and some of the other instruments, and maybe a picture of Severance Hall so you can see what it looks like. I wondered where to hang so that I could see the concert. I spied the perfect place, box 2, which was high up, right across from the stage. I spun a silk web from the orchestra seats on the bottom floor up to box 2 and simply climbed up. I attached myself to the railing and waited. I looked down and saw people arriving far below me. There were people of all ages, some who looked very old and also quite a few children. Most of them were dressed elegantly. I was so glad that I had worn my top hat and bow tie. Phew! The orchestra and chorus walked on stage and sat down. These are actually pictures of the actual people in Apollo's Fire. He is the concertmaster. I could feel the excitement. Then the audience applauded as the first violinist walked out on stage. He is called the concertmaster. He looked so elegant. He played a note on the Glock, and all of the strings played the same note to check their tuning. This is Miss Jeanette Sorrell. Finally, Miss Jeanette walked out on the stage. We all clapped. She looked very happy. She stood at the conductor's podium and raised her arms, holding a baton in her right hand. Then she lowered her arms, and the music began. The Overture. Okay, I'm going to stop here and finish the book in my next video to you, maybe tomorrow, because it's a longer book and I want to keep the videos a little bit shorter. But this lady here is really, really special. And here she is in Cleveland near us. She learned to play the violin when she was about 9 years old, and she grew up wanting to be a conductor of an orchestra. And back then, they said ladies really wasn't heard of for them to conduct orchestras, and so she was turned down for many jobs. And she decided instead, you know what? She said, I'm going to make my own orchestra. And that's when she began Apollo's Fire. And that was 26 years ago. And now she is a world-renowned conductor. And Apollo's Fire has won some of the biggest awards in the world. They've won a Grammy Award. So we're lucky to have them. We were lucky to have them at our school and to have this book written by her. She's very famous. Okay, I'll stop here and I'll finish reading tomorrow. Make sure you look at the links for the other videos on Apollo's Fire that they put on the Google Classroom. So, okay, see you next time. Have a good day.